Hey gaming fans! So today I'm going to be checking out this new format, Yu-Gi-Oh! Genesis. Obviously it just dropped, so there's a lot of questions to be answered about this format and who's it for, why they do it. But I think this format, it seems like it's geared towards players like me, people who like to play with the older cards. They like to experiment a little bit more, not just play the tier 1 decks. And definitely people who don't like Link monsters and Pendulum monsters. Now I have to say that I was a player back in the day. I started from the beginning. I played all the way up until the Pendulum time, and I wasn't a fan of the Pendulum monsters either. I thought they were a little bit busted, and there was too many crazy decks out there. And then I kind of got out of Yu-Gi-Oh for a while, and then the Link thing came in, and I could never wrap my head around it, and I just couldn't stick with it. So I kind of like the older formats, like GOAT format and stuff. But anyways, this is promising to me. This seems like something I could really sink my teeth into and make a bunch of interesting decks for it. But basically what it is you play Yu-Gi-Oh with no Link monsters and no Pendulum monsters. So you're allowed anything else. You're allowed the XYZs, you're allowed the synchros and fusions, kind of resetting the game back to before the Pendulum monsters came out. However, the interesting thing is there's no forbidden or limited list. They basically made each card have a point system, where I think the bulk of the cards are going to be 0. But anything that's kind of like heavily used or broken or powerful, it's going to have a number system. And then basically you have a cap on how many of these, the number of these cards equal up to. So it says here most cards cost 0 points, which makes sense. There's a lot of cards that are just not that powerful. But cards like Pot of Greed, for instance. And I thought when I first read this, I'm like, well, Pot of Greed's probably going to be 100. Because it says your standard cap is 100, but I guess some events can play around with that, maybe say 200 or less or more, maybe 1,000. I don't know. No, but it would probably be like, I could see some format or some stores being like, okay, 150 or 200, just to make it a little bit more aggressive. But I kind of like this 100-point system. Now, the thing is, though, it is a little bit overwhelming. Like, there's a lot of cards. Like, I saw this list here, and yeah, there's quite a few cards, which means deck building, unless you're using an online tool, which has already got the numbers programmed in there, you're just going to have to kind of, when you go and build your deck, start looking through and make sure that the cards you're choosing are not in there. So if you want, like I said, Pot of Greed, obviously it's going to be in there. But you have to go there and check the point value. And you'll have to see how many of those you're allowed to have in your deck. And this is going to make deck building a little bit crazy. I've already seen a bunch of online, I think on X, people were posting deck builds, and there was already an Exodia build where they put 3 of each piece in there because the Exodia pieces, I think, are all 0. So they put 3 of each Exodia piece and 3 Pot of Greeds, and then a bunch of other cards to just draw, Upstart Goblins and Jar of Greeds and all that kind of fun stuff. And Battle Fader, I think, was in there just to survive maybe 2-3 turns. But as well, if you ever watched the cartoon and you saw the rare hunter guy play his Exodia deck, you know that playing three of the each piece is not really optimal. You're going to brick really bad. You're going to draw a lot of bad hands. You're going to get hands where it's just all Exodia pieces. And what are you going to do? You're going to sit there and you're going to block with them and then die. And of course, there are other cards like Delinquent Duel that you can play in this format, which would rip cards out of your hand, which would be bad for you. So, yeah, you really got to pay attention to what people are going to start playing in this format. Some cards, like, Pot of Greed's right there, it's 30 points, so you can have a full play set of Pot of Greeds in your deck now. Something that I don't think, since I've started playing the game, has ever been a thing. I mean, when the first ban list started, Pot of Greed was always limited to 1. Other choices like this one here, Painful Choice, they give it a 95, which is basically 1 in your deck, and you got 5 more to play around with. So it's going to be a difficult building these types of decks. I think this is more for the casual player who's going to be able to build more fun decks. Maybe some watered down versions of what tournament decks used to be in the past, like Lightsworn, for instance. Like I don't know if Judgment Dragon is. Let's see if Judgment Dragon is in here. I don't see it. So you could build a fully functional Lightsworn deck. Looks like, see if there's any of the Lightsworn monsters. I don't see anything. Lonefire Blossoms at 33. That's interesting. Lose 1 turn is at 100. So there's a lot of interesting cards, and I know a lot of people were talking about Max C. Looks like it's at a 50, so you can have 2 Max C's in your deck, and then you can't have any other of these cards in the deck. Another one that's interesting is Mirage of Nightmare. I still remember. I think this is the card I'm thinking of when people would play this card, and you would mystical space it or something to keep the cards in your hand. Speaking of that, Mystical Space Typhoon doesn't look like it's there. Mystic Mine, now that one is at 100. I'd never liked this card. I think it's a little bit broken and unbalanced. So I'm glad it's only at 1. And you can't play anything else that's powerful. So kudos to that. Now the other question is, are these numbers permanent? Are they going to be subject to change? They're going to update this list and be obviously they can update it with newer cards and when new cards get printed, but are they going to all of a sudden Abyss Dweller being at 100 points is weird. Are they going to all of a sudden just change it and then be okay, now Pot of Greed's at 50, so now you can only have 2 in your deck, that type of thing. It's interesting. There's a lot of information still to come out, I guess, and it's really interesting to see where this is going to go, and I can't wait to start building some crazy decks under this Genesys style to see how it goes. Anyways, I just thought I'd do my little piece on this because this is interesting. This is kind of what I was hoping to see at some point in time, a format of Yu-Gi-Oh! Where you can play all the old cards again and just get rid of those Link monsters, because I'm not a fan of them. I know some people are, and hey, if you are, play the traditional Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's it. Play standard Yu-Gi-Oh! And don't bother with this version. That's why they make these formats. It's not for everyone. Anyways, let me know what you think. Throw some comments down below. Hope you subscribe, and we'll talk to you later.